Welcome to the first episode of Turn It Round the Corner podcast. I'm very privileged today to, I think, one of the hottest prospects in non-league football, a man that's I class as a good friend and someone that I've been speaking about for the last couple of seasons that I'm very surprised that someone in full-time football hasn't taken. So, good morning, Danny Scopes.
Yeah, morning. How are you?
I'm good, and you?
Yeah, very well, very well.
So I'm sure plenty of people know you in the non-league world, especially in Essex. But do you want to give a little intro to yourself to start?
Yeah, Danny Scopes, first team manager at Aveley Football Club. Been there for about 2.5 seasons now, going into sort of third season. Played local football and non-league football for many years, and then into management, and obviously this will be 3 and a bit seasons at Aveley, and I've probably done in total as a coach and manager 6 or 7 seasons at Concord Rangers as well. So been around, and then obviously a playing career before that as well.
So I think we'll touch on that as we go, but let's just start from should we say your early foundations in football. So can you think about your early memories, early role models in football?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, my football journey started probably when I was about 6 years old, and I always remember it because I discussed it with Mum quite a lot. And my dad there was trials for the local park youth team, boys team over at Eastwood Park, locally to where we live, and I was desperate to go. And me and my lifetime friend Terry West, we were both, real close mates, played football all the time in the garden. We were desperate to go and play at these trials, but my dad, who was a footballer in his time, he thought we were too young, and he didn't really want to take us to these trials. So I sort of spoke to my mum and said, "Come on, convinced him." In the end, he convinced him. So I think it was about 6 years old, and we were trialling for like an under-7s team over the park, and it was as simple as you went over, and there was about 20, 30 kids, and 10 or 11, because you played 11 aside there at that age, got picked and become the team. And I remember me and my mate Tel got in the team, and we come home, and I was buzzing and went home and said to Mum, I'm in the team. And Mum said, "Oh, great news, really pleased for me," and sort of looked at my dad, and my dad said, "Yeah, they're in the team, and I'm going to manage it as well." So he'd gone from full circle of not wanting me to go because I was too early, to actually, wanting to be my manager or wanting to manage the team, and me and Terry getting into the team. So that's my earliest memory of football. And then youth football was brilliant for me. I loved it, and it's probably a little bit different back then to it is now. And as I said, we played 11-a-side football from day one at under-7s on full-size pitches with full-size goals. But got such good memories. I was fortunate enough to play for a Whitecaps team that changed name a few times, become Echo Whitecaps, but from under-7s when they were Whitecaps, Caps or Colts or something like that, right through to sort of under-17s. I had some real good memories and met some real good friends and people I've played with at senior football as well. And yeah, my earliest memories of that, are really positive, and we were successful, and we were a good, strong team, and lots of cup finals and lots of winning leagues and lots of challenges. And yeah, no, it was really exciting as a youngster. And probably on the back of that, my dad was my role model, really. Unfortunately, I lost him a few weeks back, and it's quite disappointing that. But he was my role model. I looked up to him. He'd been a good local footballer, and everyone told me how wonderful he is. I didn't really see him play loads, but everybody I spoke to told me how good he was. And just him being my manager from under-7s to under sort of 18s in the end I think he's probably the biggest role model for me in my life, really.
So you've just touched on something there, and probably touched the nerve with myself and my dad being a footballer. How did you manage that relationship with your dad? With your dad being your manager, was that a hard one to manage? I know you manage your boys' teams now. Is that something that was an easy relationship? Because I know that can sometimes be hard for both the player and the coach.
Yeah, it wasn't too difficult. I'm not going to make it up and say that it was really challenging at all. We had a few frosty Sunday lunch times where Mum would have a go at him for moaning at me because I didn't quite do something right and that. But my dad was quite placid as a man, and he never really shouted and hollered or lost his temper. You knew if he felt you could do better, which I think is important as a kid to know that. And we had our moments where he'd tell me and I maybe would disagree, but like I say, I always felt he gave me good information. I always felt he sort of tried to support me, and I wasn't one of these players. And you see it sometimes where your dad's the manager, and you might play every week, and you take the corners, you take the spot kicks, you get player of the year every year. That wasn't me. That wasn't my dad. So it's probably harder for me to have an impression on the team and keep my place in the team and try and win awards at the end of the season because my dad was the manager. But on the whole, I think it was a good relationship, and I respected him so much, and because everybody had told me what a good footballer he was, and he was quite chilled with that. But I felt every bit of information I used to hang on really, and I'd follow suit in that. And I don't think we got much wrong between us, and I think it was a good relationship, like I say. But a few frosty Sunday dinners and Sunday roasts where it was a little bit quiet if we'd maybe lost as a team rather than just me individually.
Is that something that you've taken on with your boys? You've got obviously two boys playing youth football at the moment.
Yeah, I'm probably a bit different to my dad in terms of vocal. I like to be vocal on the sideline, and I sometimes struggle to switch in from youth to men's football when you're involved in senior football. And I like to be vocal from the sideline and try and help my team and support my team and provide my team energy. And I probably take that into youth football, and it's something that I've had to control over the years because I have to realise they are learning, they are developing, they are a lot younger as well, aren't they? So yeah, it's helped me, I think, in that way to try and keep calm, and I feel I've got a lot better. So I've managed my boys. My eldest boy, I managed him from under 8s to under 16s, and then my older boy I managed from sort of under 8s, and then he went into an academy for a little bit, but since under 13s, and I still manage him now at under 18s. So it's I'm learning. I think I'm better now as I'm getting a little bit older maybe and a bit calmer, but try and divide them from being youth and development into 3-point football at senior football.
So you just touched on another point there about academy football. So through your sort of junior playing career, was that all around grassroots? Did you go into any academies, or what was sort of your pathway up until sort of full-time sort of men's under 18s onwards football?
Yeah, it's different back then when I played, and going back quite a few years, you could play in an academy and still play for your Sunday team, where academies want control now, don't they? So if they sign you at under 8, you're in with them and you can't play for your Sunday team. So I think we had the benefit of both worlds because we could still have our fun and our Sunday games with our mates and our leagues and win stuff and be competitive. And then our academy football sort of fixed around that. So I think it was about under 12s. I think you were allowed to start going in, and I went into West Ham. There was a West Ham scout around this area, and I got selected. There was me and a couple of other boys from the team that we was in, and I went into West Ham, and that was sort of like 2-3 times a week up at Chadwell Heath, which was really good. I had some real good coaches within that, in Ray Stewart and Billy Bonds, who were coaching me, and I learned a lot in there. So I did that from sort of under 12 to under 16s while playing for my youth team as well. Whitecaps, which was really good. So I got the best of both worlds. Under 16s, I got Osgood Slatters. So I missed the whole season at Osgood Slatters. I had to rest and not train, but I still committed. I still went up there 3 times a week and watched the sessions so I could watch and learn and see what they were developing and what was going on. But unfortunately got released at the end of the season without getting sort of what you'd call a scholarship now. Floated around a little bit, went into Southend for about a season to do a bit with them, and then I just sort of thought I needed something different, and I was coming to sort of under 18s, end of my under 18s at youth football, and then felt I need to go into senior football. So I was quite lucky. I played for under 18s at Wakeram Rovers, and then straight after that managed to get into the first team, and that was where my journey started in sort of senior football.
So before we kick on with senior football, I think you've just touched on a really good point there, and something that was in the news yesterday. So talking there about being able to play for grassroots football, there was an article yesterday and a lot of news around Brentford are restarting their academy, but they're also making the decision to let the kids play for their grassroots teams at the same time. Obviously, there's a lot of conversation, around that control aspect. As you say, I remember playing sometimes 2 or 3 games, district, academy games, all around, grassroots as well. And now, as you say, everything's controlled by the academy. Do you think that would be a good thing for boys still to be able to dip in and out their grassroots, play with their mates? Like, how do you honestly see more academies going down that route and sort of giving some of that control back? I don't know where I stand with it, because I personally myself, I don't see the academies going to want to give that up. But I think it's a great thing that kids can still be, young boys and play with their mates.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's it. I think playing with your mates is so important. I think what it probably gives them, if they go down that route, it gives them gives them a sort of bit of a backup, don't it? And these academies are very good, and they take players in and they help players, but they're quite quick. If they're not up to the standard and you're not good enough, you get released, don't you? And it's as simple as that. It's black and white. It's a bit of a talent competition, isn't it? Academy football, and you have to do well, and you have to be the best talent to stay in it. That's the challenge. But I think by doing it that way, these boys will still have a connection with a grassroots team. They still have a connection with that. So if they do get released and let go, maybe that eases that disappointment a little bit, because I know with my boy, he got released and had to go and find him a new team. He had to bed into that new team. That team had been together for quite a while as a grassroots team, and he had to try and fit into that. And it was a bit challenging at first to be able to do that and different. But I think it also probably gives the boys the opportunity to be competitive, doesn't it? And competitive in leagues and cups and bits like that, which academy football doesn't quite have. And I think if academy football could maybe adapt and try and be similar to grassroots in the way of being competitive and leagues and trying to win stuff, because that's what kids want to try and do, don't they? Want to play in competitive games, and they need to learn to lose them competitive games as well, rather than just development. I think that would help as well. So I understand the benefits of, they want full contact time, they want the boys in with them, they want no one else to try and dictate to these boys how they want to develop them, and they're trying to look for the gem, aren't they, at 5, 6, 7 now, that can take them all the way through to senior football and be a professional. And I understand the principles behind that as well, but I think I think you could probably go back maybe to half and half. So in the early stages, the boys, and I think that's similar to what I did, the boys could play with their grassroots at 8, 9, 10s, 11s and 12s, and if they're good enough then at 12s, 13s, then maybe they take them in and bring them in then, and they go full time, and a better game programme from there. Maybe that might be a compromise.
That's something I totally agree with. As I say, going through it with my son at the minute, I would say that it's just a bit of a saturation of, I'd say, overcommitment too much. I think the boys miss out on a lot. I think they miss out a little bit childhood. They miss out, as you say, on those childhood sort of relationships and memories playing with grassroots teams. But I think there will be a change in the guard. There's a lot in Europe at the moment about, schoolboy players staying with their grassroots teams to 12, 13 and try and develop them later. Touching on what you've just said, obviously there's also the argument that if you don't get in that work early, that then they develop bad habits and there's sort of no way back. So you touched on there that you moved into full-time football at 18. So Great Wakering, that was your first club. I know that's a club that you spent a lot of time with. So do you want to talk about those early days and just move through your non-league career as a player?
Yeah. I was fortunate. I had a good season at sort of second year 18 at Wakering, and my dad was the manager. We had quite a good team, and I played quite well, and I thought I did quite well and got a bit of interest from the first team. And first team, I think we're in the sort of Essex Senior League there, but the Essex Senior League back there was a real competitive division. Not saying it isn't now, but it was a real competitive league because boys didn't travel so far and people didn't move around so much. So the talent in that level was really good, and Wakering had a really successful team and a really positive team with Eddie Nash and Kev Maddox as managers. And I was fortunate enough at a young age to get an opportunity to go into their pre-season, which was a bit of an eye-opener. And then I got an opportunity to play, which was really good as a sort of 18-year-old player. And I think I played the first probably 2 months, maybe 6, 7 games of the season. And I thought I was doing okay. I had my moments, of course I did as a young footballer. But I felt I was doing okay. And then what happened was another player became available, which happens all the time. And a lad who'd been at Dover and done quite well, and he wanted to come a bit more local, and I was playing left back and he was a left back, and he took my place. And so, after having that real good success at sort of 18 years old and enjoying it for 6 or 7 games, I got dropped to the reserves and told that I wouldn't be back in the first team. I had to go and play for the reserves, and as a young lad that didn't sit well with me at the time, and something I probably regret, and I walked away. In the end, I decided that I'm not doing that. I didn't want to play reserves. I was working and had a part-time job and college, and I'm going to go and play with my mates because, if you don't want me, I'll do that. And that's what I did. I dropped down. I went out of that football. I went into sort of what they call local Southend Borough Com football with the guy I work with now, who was running the team and was after me. And I went and played with men and enjoyed my football on a Saturday afternoon and really enjoyed it. And that was the sort of start of my journey from there, really, because the manager of that team sort of got a promotion and went into the Olympian League which was funny enough, was Echo Whitecaps again. And I went back there, played Olympian football, and played with real men and real characters, and who looked after me and treated me like one of their own. And that was really important. I felt I could go around being aggressive and playing the way I wanted to play, and they'd always have my back, which was really good. And then the manager there, he got to move up the levels, and he went into the Essex Senior League at Southend Manor. And he took me and quite a few others to there, and I went to Southend Manor and had a couple of real good seasons there where we were real aggressive, real physical team, and we went and upset people, and I really enjoyed that. It suited my style and how I wanted to play, and he let me be me on the football pitch was really important, and we did really well. And we played against Wakering a couple of times, and I think after we played them the second time, the manager come up to me and said, I want to take you back, and you could do that back then. It wasn't so complicated. He asked me to go back in, and I felt that was the right move for me. I felt I wanted to go and prove that I could play for them. They were the better team at the time and the top team, and I went back in there, and then that was the start of that journey. And I think I was there for 9 seasons after that, and 449 games I played, and 7 of them or 8 of them seasons were as captain and under Eddie Nash and a couple of other managers later on in the career. And that was probably brilliant, and that's probably real good memories of there. I really enjoyed my football in them stages, and it was a family, and we had lots of players, lots of local lads. We used to go out together and party together or have a night out together, but then also come together with families, and we'd all be getting partners and marriages and kids and all bits like that. And it was a really good time in my life, and I probably had a few opportunities to leave, which some I maybe regret a little bit, but I can't turn down that as a really positive time for me and a real positive seasons. And eventually that time, a new manager come in, and he didn't think I was right for the team at that moment, and I felt it was my right time to leave and move on. And I went into Southend Manor for a couple of games, went to Tilbury for about half a season, and left Tilbury in the Ryman's North at the time, and then Concord were in the Essex Senior League, and I just went and watched the game in the Thameside Trophy, and I thought, oh, this could do for me. I thought I was probably about 30 years old, maybe just over 30, and I just thought, oh, this could be right for me, and that's where I joined Concord Rangers, and that's where that story started, really.
So I think you've touched on a load of good points there, but just bringing it back to how modern football has kind of changed, especially in that non-league environment. When you went into that changing room at 17, 18 years of age, I remember coming out of academy football and doing the same at Harlow. Just tell me how you feel like that environment then to now has changed.
Yeah, I think it's probably easier now, maybe I would say, because a lot of the other players, maybe there's more younger lads, maybe within dressing rooms, and happens. You come out of the academy, you might have been working with older players anyway. There's more connection within age groups, isn't there? Boys playing up years and stuff. That didn't really happen so much. But I think when I went into it, you had to adapt really quickly because they were real men, they were real characters, and dressing rooms back then probably weren't as calm or relaxed. They were a little bit more lively, and the boys were a little bit more lively, and you had to watch your back, because if you did something that wasn't quite right or wasn't quite thing, and it wouldn't be bullying back there, but you'd get pulled up on it, and people would laugh and joke with you and that. So you had to be able to hold your own, and I think it was something I adapted to quite quickly, and I earned their respect on the football pitch quite quickly, and I think that sort of led to the dressing room and showing their respect. And I think the older players just looked after me, and I used to thrive on that, and I wanted to be one of them. I wanted to be in the group. I wanted to be part of it. I wasn't afraid of stepping in and showing what I'm made of and being a character, and I just think they looked after me in them early stages, and they were good people, which is important, isn't it, as well? And I think me being on the front foot and them accepting me for seeing, some ability that I could show, what I could offer for the team on the outside, made that sort of, work really for us. But like I said, I think it's a bit different now. I think people are it's not so much of that team spirit character as much. It's important, but people are a bit more individualistic, aren't they? And they come in, everybody's different within that dressing room, and lots of people, especially being a manager now, they like to do it their own way, and sometimes that might be a quiet way, sometimes that might be a loud and aggressive way, and it's up to you as a manager. And I think you have to show a little bit more respect in terms of what people are like. And I think, answer your question, probably back in the day when I stepped in that dressing room, if you didn't fit in and you didn't follow suit, then you probably got shifted out, or you didn't 100%. Get in. I think now you have to accept that everybody's different, and everybody will want to prepare in a different way. Everyone comes from different background, different lifestyles, different different ways of being themselves, really, and I think you have to accept that. And if you try and force that, then I think you can have problems with.
So putting your manager's hat on, as you say, I think one of the first things you said is, and that's what I remember as well about non-league. Some of my best memories are also nights out with a team, and there was I think in all culture back when we played, there was more of a drinking culture, more of a going out on a Saturday night culture. Obviously, you're a manager now. I go to lots of non-league games. Pretty much, I see a Lucas Aid and you're off. There's not many chances to, foster team spirit on a night out. Putting your manager's hat on, how do you go about doing that now when you haven't got the sort of old school nights out, the old school sort of environment? How do you go about fostering that same environment?
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. It has changed, and boys look after themselves a lot better than probably we did when we played. And it would be training, then a few beers, and then it'd be out on the Friday would be a night in probably, or a quiet one, play on the Saturday, and then you'd be out on the Saturday night as well, and a few beers, and you'd recover till Tuesday and be back in. But I think the boys now look after themselves a lot better, which I think is important. They're more in the gym, they're more focused on what they're doing and their development, especially the younger lads, and they seem to want to go out with partners and couples and groups rather than guys and lads, etc. So yeah, no, I think it's good. It's nice to see. I don't mind that as well. And I think you have to sort of adapt and you have to change. And as I said earlier, I think if you try and force something onto a group and try and force a culture, force an environment that you want because you think that will give you success, I think that sometimes can backfire on you a bit, because some of them boys might not be able to buy into that. Sure. So I think you have to trust the dressing room and you have to trust the individuals, and we have leadership groups and captains and people like that will try and put things together and things in place. So they do have some social events together as well, and I think it's just having fun within the sessions maybe, or the training, and that environment that you create makes them enjoy their football, and they go off the training pitch with a smile because they've enjoyed the session and they've had a bit of fun and done a bit of fitness and learned something within that session. They go into that dressing room a bit more smiley, a bit more bubbly, and that helps create your culture. That helps get you going, I think, as well. And like I say, I think you've got to be careful not to force it, because everybody's different and you have to be respectful of each individual. I think the challenge you get, boys aren't all local as well now. Back in our day, a lot of boys would live within a certain mile radius, so it would be easier to get together. They'd be happy to stay longer, and some boys might have 2 hours to drive after training, after a game. So why would they want to stay around, and ideally can't stay around and have a drink anyway? So yeah, I respect it, and I think it's better, and the boys are much fitter. They look after themselves much better. But I still think you can create something, and I think you can create a togetherness, and winning helps, obviously. If you can perform and you can win games of football, that helps create that environment and that culture.
You're saying about the travelling. One thing that I always found quite good was the car school. Is the car school still a thing in non-league football?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, we try and hook people up in certain areas, and I'm quite big part of my recruitment is location, and probably this year's we've got a few boys from a bit further afield than we've had before, but I always try and get boys. I just feel if you sit in a car for 2 hours, and what with the English roads and the traffic, that can be quite treacherous, quite long-winded, and you turn up after doing that, it can sometimes have an effect on you, 100%. Can't it? And that might affect your performance. So I'm quite cautious of where boys come from, and first question I ask is like, where you out? Where do you come from? Where do you travel? Are you happy with the travel? Can you do that? And even when they come in a train, and then before we sign, we have that conversation, because I think it's important, because we want to try and hook up. So I have looked this year, a lot of boys, and got a few boys travelling from the same areas a bit further, so they can share journeys, they can share cars, and I think it helps, and it keep them
100%,
keep them awake, keep them motivated afterwards. Maybe talk to each other on the way. It's going to be better for themselves, isn't it? I think
100%. So you got to Concord at 30 years of age. Talk to me about the sort of twilight of your playing career before you sort of moved into management. Obviously you had some amazing memories there as a player, and then as a sort of manager. So yeah, just talk to me about how sort of you finished playing and that transition into being a manager.
Yeah, well, when I went in there, I had a bit of a knee problem. I needed an operation, so I needed just to clear out, nothing serious and that. And I knew I'd be out for a couple of weeks. I sort of went in with a focus of that coming up, and I played a couple of games, had that work done, and then went in. I felt it would help me be at that level, but that suited me. I just really enjoyed it. I just wanted to go and really enjoy my football again, and I felt I'd sort of had that real good times at Wakerin. It ended a bit sour maybe within that last half a season before I left, and then I went to Southend Manor and Tilbury, and no disrespect to anybody that was at them football clubs or managers, because they were great guys, but just myself, I just wasn't motivating myself a little bit, and which I feel disappointed and probably regret a little bit now, and probably just made the decision to try and go somewhere else and have a bit of a fresh start. And I think it worked for me. It had a real good vibe to it, a bit of the Wakerin vibe, where it was family and there was, real hard working people behind the scenes at Concord Rangers, and real friendly guys. And I got really, when I was a bit older, I got friendly with the chairman and the committee and people of a similar sort of age to me. So I felt part of it, and I felt like I could really enjoy my football again. And I did. I had a couple of really good seasons, or first season was a bit of a half season, then into the first full season. I really enjoyed it. I think we finished just outside the playoffs, but it was really good. It was a real good bunch of lads, and I really enjoyed the environment, and I was playing quite well. I felt I'd got my hunger back a little bit. I dropped in more permanently in centre half rather than centre midfield, and I was really enjoying it, and I felt I could help the younger players, which I quite enjoyed, and quite being vocal to them and trying to develop them as well. And then it sort of just changed really quickly because the manager left. He moved on, and I got asked to do the job, which was, I got bullied into it. I've told this story a million times, but got bullied into it because I got asked for a drink down the Sarah Moore pub with Hilsey and Ant Smith and Dan Trinkle at the time, and I thought we were going for a social, and I got there, they were all sitting around the table and sort of very serious faced, and I said, "Oh, what's up? What's wrong?" And they went, "Oh, we want you to be the manager." He said, "You've got the credentials, we want you to be the manager." And I went, "Oh no, I don't want to be the manager, I still want to play football. I still want to play. I've got stuff to offer." And he said, "Oh, you can do both." And I thought, "Oh, that would be tough. That'd be really challenging." I'd always wanted to go into managing. I always see myself as a coach and a manager, even at a young age, and probably didn't pay as much attention, or there wasn't so much information when I was playing to be able to pick up for that. But in my head, I thought I want to be. I'm a leader. I was a captain of nearly every team I played for, so I wanted to go on and be a manager. That was my aim, and I just felt it was a bit early, and I was worried about the effect it would have on my playing career. But they bullied me into it, and I agreed, and that's why I stepped up to sort of be a player manager. So it was a bit of a crossover, and that's when I got really fortunate at that stage where Danny Cowley and Nicky Cowley become available, and Danny had to retire for injury, so he wanted to come in as a coach, and he felt Concord would be a good option for him as well to start his coaching career and managerial career. And I managed to get him in and a few players in, and I think that's probably one of our best seasons of football that I've ever enjoyed, really. And some people say player manager's really tough, and it is, don't get me wrong, but with Danny supporting me and Nicky in there as a captain and a good player, we had a real good team. And I think it's 2007, 2008, and we went on and had a good FA Vars run. We won the Essex Senior League and done the double and lost in another cup final, and it's a real good season. And unfortunately, I got injured towards the end of the season, so I become more manager than player. But, we had a real good team spirit. We had all lads were local. All lads would go out together. And it went back to sort of them original days of my Wakerin time. And that's why I remember it as really, really positive. And obviously we got promoted, and then it started to change and develop, and boys come in from further afield. And I become sort of the manager with Dan, and we become joint managers. And it sort of went on to there. And that's probably where my playing career ended, really, as a senior player, because I sort of moved into the manager, and injury had a bad back at the time that I was managing, and I couldn't quite look after it. So that was probably that season after that where I sort of went, my days of playing competitive senior football were probably done, and my managerial career sort of started.
But before I ask you a couple of questions to close out your playing career, how hard is that transition, would you say, between playing to being a manager? I've done it at Harlow myself. I've got my own views on it, but I'd like to know how you felt about going from one of the boys, as you said, Trenks, Hilsey, Ant Smith, good local non-league boys, all had quite good sort of non-league careers. Everyone loved the night out back then, to then there being that line where you're no longer a player, you're in charge, you might be dropping one of your mates. How did you manage that transition?
Yeah, it was tough. Yeah, it was hard, and that's still probably the toughest thing to this day, and having them conversations. And like to think I'm honest. I like to think I'm quite caring in terms of players, making sure players are happy and enjoying their football. And the hardest thing to do is to tell them that they're not going to be able to play today or they're not going to be involved, and that don't change. And even to this day, that gives me sleepless nights and the tummy turns when you're sort of driving and you think, I've got to have that conversation. And they are tough conversations, but you have to have them. And I think boys appreciate it if you're honest and you're upfront and you have them conversations. I know a lot of managers don't, and that does have an adverse effect. So I think I was quite lucky because I think I had the respect of the group, because we took a lot of boys in that come in that had played for Dan, but we also had quite a lot of boys that had stayed under, played with me, and I was captain in that last sort of season as playing at Concord, and I think I had their respect, and I think that's a big thing, isn't it? I think if you've got respect and the boys know you care about them, and I was a player that when we were on that pitch, that my other 10 players in that team and the subs, I was protecting them all. I was looking after them all, and they needed me to be in the middle of it. I'd be in the middle of it, and they needed me to back them up. I'd be backing them up, and that's just the way I was as a character and the way I played. And it was, we were all in it together, and so I think they knew that I cared about them. So I think that helped me. I think the last manager was good, probably as a manager, but maybe not so good on the tactical side. And I felt I had a little bit of knowledge about that, enough to get through. And then I was lucky because Danny Cowley come in, and you talk about role models, and people always look at role models as people that may be older than you. But when Danny come in, and I worked with Danny for the first time, and he was younger than me, and he come in, I learned a lot from Dan, and real lot, and the way he carried himself, and the way, the confidence that he showed, and the way he could handle a dressing room and manage a team. And I learned a lot from that in that first year, and he was really important for me in that transition. So it made it a little bit easier probably for me, but it is tough and it is hard. And like you say, especially when they're pals and mates, and I've been really close with them boys over the couple of seasons I've been there, and some I'd played with drinks at other clubs, and Johnny Effer come and played for me as well. But I think because I had their respect, it probably made it a little bit easier in that transition. But I'd imagine going fresh in without knowing too many people into your first role probably can be quite daunting and quite tough and quite challenging, because you're going to make mistakes, and players are quite brutal and they will pick up on mistakes, and if things aren't quite right, they're quite quick to moan about you. So you have to get your own house in order. And as a manager, as a player manager, I always felt I could lead on the pitch, so I'd always gain that respect on the pitch, that boys would trust me in terms of that as well.
So okay, before we close out your playing career, a couple of quick fire questions. What was that one bit of advice that you got when you was a kid or going through the ranks that you probably dismissed that you wished you'd taken on board?
Yeah, I think for myself, I think my biggest issue as a young player was probably discipline, and not so much discipline in terms of swearing, shouting, abusing a referee, fighting or anything like that. It was probably just more aggression that probably caused me too many problems. And I'd always try, and as I just said, I'd always try and fight other people's battles. I felt I'd have to step in and help them or support them. So, so how it is, if one of my players gets taken out, I'm there ready to back them up. And that's probably something I probably took to the limit and probably went over the line at times in terms of that. So as a regret, that's probably something. And I remember speaking to a couple of people, but I had a manager in my youth, in my football career, as Eddie Nash, who managed me for sort of 7-8 seasons, and he was a real aggressive manager. He was an aggressive player, and I'd do anything for him, and that was the way we worked. And we had a partnership, and he trusted me to do that and bail the team out when it needed it. And that was I just adapted that as my role. And I thought, well, I'm the enforcer, and I'm the one that sort of looks after everyone else and runs around like a nutcase and gets stuck in. And probably looking back and speaking to a couple of people at the sort of end of my career, especially when I dropped back in different positions to centre half, and a lot of people said to me what a good footballer I actually was, or what I could have done. And probably I got known for my reputation in terms of discipline and that, rather than my actual footballing ability. And maybe my footballing ability and was better than what people maybe have noticed at that, and probably a lot of people maybe got turned off of maybe wanting to take me to a higher level because of my discipline. So as a regret, probably in terms of that, I should have been able to manage that a little bit better. I still enjoyed it, still loved doing it, but it wasn't until later on, and I spoke to a few senior people who said, if you'd have controlled that, you maybe would have been higher and you'd have moved up the levels.
I think that's the times that you played in as well, because if you look at, I'd say, Premiership football, Championship football, there isn't you don't see many leaders anymore. You don't see many people that are talking, commanding, getting people in position. So I think as football's sort of changed, I think people now do just worry about themselves and maybe channel that aggression in a bit of a more simpler way. So what would be your greatest memory of playing before you hung the boots up? What would be your overriding sort of best day?
Yeah, my two probably. If I can have two, one. I played for Wakefield and we had a real bad season, and it was a real tough season, like really tough, probably one of the toughest I've had. And a team you love and a team you care for and mates you care for, and we were struggling and we were bottom of the league. We had a manager change sort of halfway through and lost a few players. Few players come back in, and we had to go to Chatham last game of the season to try and stay up. And it was a real tight game, real close game. Chatham was a grass pitch back then. It wasn't the best. And I remember scoring late on, about 80 minutes, and got a header at the back post from quite far out, edge of the box, looped it over the goalkeeper and scored. And we managed backs to the wall for the last 10, 15 minutes, and we held on. And it was a real good achievement. And even though it had been a real disappointing season, to stay up and score that goal that kept Wakefield in that division, and they went on after that to have some good success, and I feel that if that hadn't have happened, so even the height of disappointment, I felt that was a good moment for me and something I'd always cherished, that I was able to get the goal that could keep them in that division and keep them going. They've had relegations and promotions since, but at that moment I felt it was really important. And probably highlight is good times at Wakefield, but probably that, as I said earlier, that Concord season, that 2007-8, when I was player manager, and I was able to play with some real good players and some real good characters in Danny Hill, Dan Trinkle, Michael Beggs, Johnny Heffer played. We had some real talented, I'm going to miss the load out and offend a few, but we had some real good characters and good groups, and Nicky Cowley and Danny Cowley there, as Nicky as captain and Danny as my assistant manager. And it was brilliant. We used to travel everywhere. Gary Ewers as our kit man. We used to travel everywhere on a minibus, like home and to away games, and the minibus would be rocking on the way there, it'd be rocking on the way back. And it was a real good togetherness and team spirit, but we had real good football players as well, and we played some real good football, and we managed to get over the line last day of the season again to win the league and get Concord promoted to Ryman's North. And I think that was probably it was sort of at the end of my career as a player and into manager, but it sort of capitulate, not sure what the word is, but it sort of combined my whole career really, and what I'd loved about football all in that one season. And I remember we had a presentation evening at the end of the season after the last game of the season, and we were back at Barkingside was the game. We went back to Concord, in the afternoon, and I think we left there on a Sunday morning, and that was probably my last game I played at senior football. I was on the bench that day, but as part of it. So yeah, I think that's probably as a whole, that probably combined it all together, and it was a real good memory.
Sounds like the good old days.
Yeah.
So you finish playing, you go in with Danny Cowley. How long did you do that role together, and talk me through that time at Concord before you moved on?
Yeah, I think we had 3 seasons. I think 4 seasons in total. First one was me as manager, Dan as assistant manager, and then we become joint managers, which was natural progression. Was brilliant the season after.
Is that hard to do, joint managers?
It wasn't. No, not. It probably can be at times. I'd imagine. I wouldn't speak for everyone. It wasn't for me and Dan, and I don't think we had a crossword the whole time. And I think we were totally different type of characters, probably in the way we sort of led our lives a little bit. And but it worked. It just worked, and it was a case of just trusting each other, and what we had, that relationship that if we made a decision and we went with someone else's decision, we were fully back that person. And I'd back Dan to the hill, even if I didn't disagree with it, and it worked quite well. We were a bit chalk and cheese. Everyone would probably think that he was probably bad cop and he was good cop and I was bad cop, but it was probably the other way around.
I'd definitely say it was the other way around.
Yeah, because he would upset people. He wouldn't be afraid to other managers or other teams or other players, and even our own players. He wouldn't be afraid to tell them, and probably something I learned in that honesty. He wouldn't be afraid to tell them, what he thought and what he felt was needed and was right, and he did that really well. And I'd always back him, and he'd always back me as well. So I just think we didn't really know each other before that first season. We'd sort of played against each other loosely before, but wouldn't really have a conversation or anything like that. And for us to just connect that way. And, it was special. It was a real good, without getting too romantic with it, it was a real good relationship together. And, I loved my time working with Dan, and he was fortunate. And as I said earlier, I learned a lot of him. I really did. He used to, strut his stuff, and he used to always say that he'd walk in the room and pretend he's the best looking guy in the nightclub, even though he knows he's not, but he's going to strut around like he did. And he walked in the dressing room like that, and he earned players' respect from that, and he knew his stuff. And I picked up a lot in them years from that. And, I probably was the arm around the shoulder and the, come here, mate, like, come on, we'll be okay. Like, we can work around this, and working with the individuals a little bit, and feel that I've still got that skill set now, which I think is important. And yeah, no, I really enjoyed them times as joint managers. It was really, really good. And we were being successful at the time, and I think that always helps. And we managed to get the first season, we creeped into the playoffs in the Ryman's North, lost in the playoff final at Waltham Abbey, and following season we got promoted and beat Enfield in the playoff to get up to the Isthmian Premier. And we had a bit of a tough season in that first season. Then I stepped back and stepped aside and had other things I wanted to get into, and I left Dan. I felt it was the right time for the football club, and Nicky coming as a coach and Glenn Alzipede coming as assistant manager, and I stepped away from senior football for a little bit.
And what did you do in that time that you stepped away? Why do you feel like you needed to come out? Is it because it was getting too much? Was it overriding, or did you miss playing? I know you come out and played some vets football, but what was that overriding reason that you just got out of that hot seat?
Yeah, I was enjoying it. Nothing to do with enjoyment, nothing to do really with commitment side. I think the key factors probably were I did miss playing. I think you're right, and where I'd sort of retired and gone into management quite quickly. I wanted to go and play, so I sort of felt I could go and play some vets football and some Sunday football, and have a go. End up playing vets Saturday football, which I felt was more competitive and it suited my style, and played with your good self. And we had some great times, didn't we? And some real good seasons, and won some leagues and some cup finals. It was brilliant, and really enjoyed that. Really pleased I did that part of it. But I think the main deciding factor was two things really. One was my business. My business needed me to be a bit more committed to that and support it, because we were going through a bit of a tough time, and we'd had a change of directorship, and one director had left, and I'd become a director, and I felt that needed my focus for a bit of time. So rightly so, and I did that, and that was the right decision. And the main thing was to just be with my boys a little bit more, because they were both starting their football journeys, and I felt, going back to what I said at the start, I felt my dad had been there for me that start, and I felt I needed to be there for them. So I felt it was the right time, and then just to develop really, because I'd come from playing to managing without really doing any coaching,
really
without
quickly,
doing any. I'd been in sessions and around sessions, but I'd never done anything. So I felt I needed to go and learn and develop and become a better coach, because I felt the level we were getting to was higher, and it needed me to be better. I couldn't just stand there and watch. I needed to be better at what I did. So stepping aside and developing myself was probably the most important thing.
And how did you do that? Did you go and watch games? Would you go and watch training sessions? Because as I say, I think you can get away in them lower leagues if you've got the best players, you normally win, right? I know they say the same in the Premiership, but it's more, sometimes it's a bit of a fight for 70 minutes, and then if you've got the better players, they pop up, right? As you say, you got up to Conference South, Ryman Prem very quickly, and then obviously you need to probably fine tune them skills and that knowledge. So how did you do that?
Yeah, well, I obviously coached my boys' team, so that was really good. I had both teams. So my older boys' team started as what they would call a Tigers team, so slightly lesser players than the top team. So they were a little bit more challenging, but good. Eventually we got them through the levels, and they won the Premier League, Sunday Premier League in the end, and a lot of them boys went on to EGA football, so that was a good success. And my younger boy was coming up, developing, and then I got involved with just a local academy, Three Lions Academy. I think you know, and your boy went there as well. And Oscar Bally there run a great academy, and he sort of recognised that I'd been involved in football, and so I just went and coached for them. And it was a couple of nights a week. It was a Tuesday and a Wednesday after work. It was tough because in the winter, like, you've had hard that work and running a business, and then you get changed and go out in the cold and the wet and coach. It was tough, but I thought I had a good variety of kids. There was a real talented element to the grid, and then there was a lot of boys that just getting first into football, boys and girls really, and I just felt I could practice on them, and behind the scenes I worked out what I felt would work in terms of coaching, and a bit different to kids to adults, but I still think they combine. And I do a lot of the drills I did with these kids, I do with the do with the senior teams even to this day. Even until yesterday I was doing one, and they loved it, and the buzz was exactly the same, and I've been doing that drill for 10, 15 years probably in that time. So I felt I could make mistakes with the kids, and parents who were paying probably for the sessions don't want to know that, but I felt I could put on a session. It didn't quite work. I could adjust and adapt, and I learnt that, and I think that's a good skill set to have in non-league football, because you go with these bright ideas, you go with this plan of action, and you got your session plan. But if some boys aren't feeling it, some boys have had hard day at work, or two have pulled up with injury, or they don't want to train, or one stuck on the bridge because he can't get there, and that, you have to be able to adapt. And I think that's what I learned at youth football, is you can adapt sessions, and you can chop and change between bits, and makes you more flexible. And I think you can take that into senior football, and I really loved that. And I did a lot of research. I tried to develop myself. I looked at videos. Social media was becoming more heightened and more access to stuff, which is good. It can be overload at times, and I advise a lot of managers and coaches to be careful, because you can overload yourself with what you're trying to put across. And you have to remember, a lot of stuff you see is with elite players, and you're not always working with elite players, because the levels and non-league and other things that will happen. So I just went away and I did as many sessions as I could. I got as much contact time with players as I could. Went and coached the girls' team, women's team for a few sessions, just to get that development environment. And then I sort of moved into League Ramblers, which was Olympian League, and sort of helped. Well, I was playing vets there and helped out with their first team, Olympian level, just putting on sessions and developing, and really got myself more confident in what I was doing, more flexible, as I said, in what I was doing, and I felt I was ready for that next step. And I managed the Olympian League, or coached the Olympian League, for a couple of seasons, and Concord come knocking again. I'd always been involved in Concord behind the scenes with the committee, and then they come knocking again and offered me like a first team coaching job, which under Sammy Moore at the time, which I felt was the right time then to go back in, and I could manage the kids' football, the work, and the non-league football again.
So you go back in as a coach. I think you've just made some great points there about being adaptable, getting a new skill set, learning to have a different approach. How did that change then, going back in and not being the manager? Obviously, then you've got a foot really in both camps. You can be, mates with the players still a little bit. Is that again because you went at that level, you just wanted to ease yourself back in, or that was just the route back in at that time?
Yeah, I hadn't really planned it. I'd always thought in my head, I feel like I'm nearly ready and going that. And Sammy went in there, and he knew me from old, and people had spoke highly of me, which was lovely. And he kept on at me and said, like, I want you in, I want you as part of my team, because you're a local. And they weren't local in terms of the management team, so it worked in terms of organisation and structure as well. And I just thought it'd be a good one to go back into. I think you just said it, just to go in as a player, as a coach, to be around the players, not have to worry about who we were signing, not have to worry about letting people down, not leaving people out. So I thought it'd be a good route back in to get myself started, and it was. And I went in, and there was a manager and an assistant manager, and then a first team coach as well. So I had to fit in. So again, I had to be flexible, and I sort of went in. I looked at what they had covered quite well, and looked at the bits they maybe didn't have covered. A lot of set piece stuff, a lot of stats stuff back then they weren't doing. So I sort of threw myself into that, went, no, I'll cover that for you. I'll jump in and organise your set pieces, defending and attacking, and a bit of variation in that, and throw-ons. And I did a lot of work on that I'd studied and I'd learnt while I was away, and I put it in place, and it really worked really well. And it was not having the pressures of being the manager labelled me to be confident in terms of that. And I think I got buy-in from the group. We had some good senior players and some good young players within that group, and I got buy-in, and went on and had a real good season, finished third in the National South, which for Concord Rangers probably was their highest ever finish, and a real positive season, that, and I really enjoyed it. And obviously then there was issues with the management team and the chairman that I won't go into, but had to result in the management team having to leave, and we ended up back where I'd started in 2007, sitting at a table with the chairman, and he was offering me the job. But this time there wasn't no hesitation. I felt I was ready, and I went for it.
You've done an amazing job there. And I want to just tie into the fact that obviously some of your, I don't know if it actually was all of it, a lot of that was under COVID times. I'd say for me, from the outside, one of your biggest achievements is probably taking Concord Rangers side to play at Wembley at the Trophy. So, can we just speak about that cup run and how you got there? What was the main differences playing in COVID? You know, did that take someone a cherry off it for you? As I say, I remember watching it at home, and you know, it's for me, it was probably be one of your proudest achievements, right? But you know, it was in an environment that no one had ever come across before, or never had any experience of. So, do you just want to talk me through that cup run?
Yeah, I think that season there with the two COVID seasons, really,
Yeah,
I think that it was. Don't get me wrong, we don't want to go through that ever again. It was really, really bad for us all. It was, but I think what it did, it slowed it down a little bit, and it probably enabled me to sort of put things in place and work at, because you're in, you're out, and it sort of give you a lot of breaks and stuff, a lot of time for reflection. And when it's going at 100 miles an hour, you don't really get a lot of time to reflect. You're in it, you're doing it, everything's processed, organised, and you go week to week and it flies by, but it's non-stop. There's not a lot of time to take yourself out of it. But COVID enabled you to do that at times, because you might go, oh, look, we can't train this week, so you'd step back and you'd have to work differently in terms of things for the people, and what's that become important in terms of organising training sessions and for the boys individually. And so you have to learn some different skills of managing that probably no one knew before, so we were all adapting as we went through. So I think it helps you, and again makes you flexible now in these times. So it was real challenging. And in terms of that cup run, that cup run was, was impressive for several reasons, not just me as a manager, but we had a group of step 3, step 4 footballers in that. I think we had one player in the whole dressing room that whole cup run that had played National League step 2 football. We took a lot of players from down the pyramid and brought them into Concord Rangers. So, and a lot of players were new players as well. That was a whole new team. When we started that season, we had 2 players in the dressing room, and we had to build a whole new squad. And obviously, Adam Drew coming with me in recruitment, and so I think to be able to grab a group of players, to be able to mould a group of players within that recruitment, and then be successful. And the league campaign was good up until the FA Trophy run took over, and we took our foot off the gas. We didn't have enough players to be able to focus on the league and the cup, and we were safe in the league, and we always felt the league might get stopped anyway because of the COVID. So we put all our focus into that trophy run, but that trophy run just had everything. It had everything in it. It had away games, it had penalty shootouts, it had replays. We had 2 replays away from home, and that we had to go to. Bath drew at home, Slough drew at home, went away to Slough in a replay, 1-3-2. Bath went away, 1-2-1 late on. And these things are challenging, aren't they? In non-league football, and with a new group of players and a new boys to the level, and we just kept going and going, and it just become that bit of a dream, really. And we just kept playing teams, and our run started quite competitive. We had Maidstone, Bath and Slough from our own division, and then we sort of had some other challenges. We had to go and play Leamington from the north, which was a real good game, a real big physical side, and we managed to get over the line with them. And it just become something the boys bought into, and there was a buzz about the changing room, and we had penalty saves. Our goalkeeper Chris Haig, from day one in that cup to the final, he had his man a match in the final as expected, and what we needed. But from day one, he had drama within that, and was a hero every game or every moment. We had goal scorers, late minute winners, and stuff like that. And it was just a dream, really, to be part of. And right until the end, obviously Leamington, and then we played Royston. Like the Royston game they turned up on a Saturday with 300 supporters.
I remember coming to the game where they turned up. They had loads of coaches who got called off.
Yeah, we had
at 1 o'clock. That was a bit of a saga, wasn't it? That Royston game.
Oh, they were fuming, and I don't blame them. But I can hand on heart, we done everything we could to get that game on, but pitch just struggled. The weather was bad. The pitch just struggled, and it weren't us that called it off. The referee called. We wanted to give it every opportunity, and hence Royston travelled. But that sort of maybe worked in our favour a little bit, because they come back on the Tuesday night with probably less supporters, less fans. We had more fans, it felt like, on that day, and we managed to beat them on a real muddy, boggy pitch and get over the line. They missed a penalty in that game that was saved by Chris Haig, saved a penalty within the game, and I think that we scored, they scored, then we scored again late on, I think just after extra time, and we put a sub on. Dakari Sharif come on, he was only on the pitch 1 minute in extra time, and he scored the goal that won it for us, and had a real good celebration when he did sort of double, treble backflips and stuff, and and we had pitch invasions, and Concord Rangers as
Yeah.
a football club has, in terms of supporters, it's limited. So how it is, it struggles in that field to generate two clubs on the island and to generate supporters. They've got a real hardcore small group, but it is a small group. But to have pitch invasions and all our youth teams and all our kids were on the pitch, and it was just drama after drama after drama, and even getting to we got to the semi-final, and it was a two-legged semi-final. How's Owen, lowest ranked team in the tournament? You think you've beaten all these other teams around you, and then you got How's Owen, who were flying at the time, well budgeted, well supported club, and they sold out. The first leg got sold out at their place, 3,500 people. Supposed to be on the Saturday week before, got canned, stopped, COVID, done. Okay, well, yeah, we'll get it back in. Then nothing at all. And you've worked really hard, had all this drama, all this focus, and you're 2 games or two-legged game semi-final away from your achieving what your dream is, isn't it? We all want to play at Wembley, and to get to play, but to manage at Wembley is something I'm not ever going to forget in terms of that. But it got stopped, and that was heartbreaking at the end of the day, and it was so disappointing. It was so emotionally tough to take at that moment.
So many ups and downs.
Yeah, I probably felt like jacking the whole lot in, and I think a lot of people did at the football club, because you tried to do something and it just felt like it had gone. That opportunity had gone, but thankfully to the FA and good people of Concord and How's Owen, we agreed and we managed, and the trophy, the FA in the main got it played, and we played it in the pre-season of the following season, which we'd lost a lot of players because we'd had successful. A lot of boys had gone on to higher level. Some had left, moved on, and we'd had to get some back from the season before. So we literally had to play a semi-final in pre-season, which had never been heard of before, to get to Wembley as well, not just a semi-final for the Thameside Trophy or anything like that, carryover. And we had to put a new team together. You know what I mean? The rules were we could have 6 new players. The rest had to play a part in last year. And so we had people making that. We managed to beat How's Owen, and we done really well. Managed to beat How's Owen in that semi-final in a real tight game. It was a false game because nobody was really fit, and you're expected to play one of the biggest games of your career, and managed to get over the line and then get the final. That was obviously delayed and until there, and then for the final we had to build a new team. We had people making their debut in a trophy competition.
Was that in the same season?
No, that was the following season. Yeah, so
you more or less waited a year to play.
Yeah, I think same season. Sorry, it was we played the pre-season. August was the semi-final, and then we played the final in May. So, but the season got stopped in April, I think it was. So we'd played through, and then COVID had killed the season. I think it was about 6 weeks the season had finished, so we had to wait 6 weeks without a game. Not allowed in too much contact because of COVID. No. We arranged some behind closed doors friendlies, which was really good. We had 6 weeks to prepare for what was a game at Wembley, and it's always going to be tarnished because of what happened, and it's a great memory and no supporters in there, but to lead a team out, any team at Wembley, and to stand on that sideline and manage at Wembley, that's something. I look back now. At the time I probably didn't celebrate it because I wanted to win and I wanted to do quite well, and my whole focus was on not getting battered 6 or 7-1 on live TV. So my focus went into it, and on the day I probably didn't even take any photos, videos, or enjoy it. I was so focused to try and win the game of football. And then looking back over the years, I remember what achievement that was and how important that was, and the fact to not be able to have my wife and my kids there to be there for me was disappointing, but I got to have my dad there, and I got a good photo of my dad, next in the Wembley rooms with a picture of a mannequin with a Concord shirt on, and it's something that cherished forever in that way. So it's nice that he could be there to, from the start of my career, getting me into football, to then being there watching me manage at Wembley was a proud day for me, and I'm pretty sure a proud day for him as well.
Do you ever have any sleepless nights and think, what if with games like that? Obviously, you give a good show yourself. A team from a higher league, and no one would have expected you to win. But with yourself involved, the old Concord spirit, is there something sometimes you look back and think, what if? Or are you now reflecting on that? Just you was happy, and what an achievement it was. Obviously, time's a good thing with thoughts, right? Either way.
I think just to to keep the score down was probably really impressive. I remember speaking to Danny Cowley the week before, and he was brilliant in the build-up in terms of that. And he said to me, "I'm going to say something to you that you won't want to hear, but." He said, "I just want to protect you a little bit, but you could you could get done. They should beat you 6 or 7-1. You know what I mean? Like if you score, you're lucky because they've been playing in League Two like non-stop, and we'd not played, and they were a real good team and having a real good season." And he said, "I just want to prepare you for that because you're going to get a camera shoved in front of you and a microphone, and that might happen. And the team you love and care for, and the club you love and care for, has just got battered. Be ready for that." And it sort of resonated with me, thinking, "Oh God, please don't let that happen." But probably in my back of my mind, I was ready for that to happen. But it probably made me hungry in that last week to make sure that weren't going to happen. And the only regret is Jack Corley had a real good opportunity. We worked on set pieces. I think we managed to get a good delivery in the box. He was open. He'd made a good run. He was probably about 3 yards out, maybe. I'll give him the benefit, but he and it hit his knee and went over the bar, and I think that was probably about 70 something minutes, maybe 64 minutes, 65 minutes. And I think if he'd have scored that, it might have galvanised us to get through that little bit extra in terms of fitness and something to hang on to, at least to take it to the penalties at the time. But we just ran out a bit of steam. They managed to bring on a couple of subs and change a few things. We brought on a couple of subs. It didn't really impact the game, and we were getting tired. We'd done a lot of work, and it broke away. We just lost our marker, and they scored. So probably regret that opportunity. Maybe that was our chance. I don't blame anyone for that, but if that had gone in, it might have been a bit of a different story. But like I say, I think I can be proud of that achievement and what we've done. When I look back, when I'm out of the game, I think that'd be something that I'll probably always refer. I try not to talk about it. I try not to keep bringing it up. But I think, in reflection, I think it's probably one of the proudest moments you're probably going to have.
Brilliant.